I hope you like this video on unconventional wisdom, how one man can change this world. A very good afternoon to all of you today. It is wonderful to see you all again today on the second day of the year, joining the GCF discussions. Some of you were here yesterday, and as I mentioned, the Global Citizen Forum was founded in the beginning of 2013, and since then, we have sought to create and build public opinion around issues that matter to us collectively as global citizens. We provide a platform to build awareness and create innovative approaches to understand them and find possible solutions via mutual discussion and dialogue. Yesterday, we had some very mentally stimulating discussions with Mr. Amin Tufani setting the tone. I think we all agreed that education system of yesteryears and today needs an overhaul to encourage students to think out of the box and be more creative, imaginative, and innovative in finding solutions for a more equitable society. As Amin said, what you think, you become. We also spoke of how technology can be an equalizer and innovative ways to achieve financial inclusion can be a powerful tool to empower the poor. Coming to today's theme, UN was created to protect and promote peace and development in the world. However, its impact to achieve this is being questioned. And as the UN begins its 70th year of its existence, it must set new examples of stellar leadership, or else we run the risk of encouraging the creation of alternative organizations in different areas who will be forced to take up this mantle. You see the rise of Bitcoin as an example being run by the people. Our discussions today will be focused on creating a UN 2.0, a rejuvenated UN to lead a new world order. The UN, being a world organization, needs to have a seamless line of communication with global public opinion, and technological innovation can make this possible. And it is the right time to use disruptive and exponential technologies to create a level playing field in the UN, giving prominence to dialogue versus the traditional one-way communication. Opening the discussion today, we have Dr. B.K. Modi, who is the founder of the Global Citizen Forum and is popularly regarded as a futurepreneur, value creator, and a technopreneur. As a founder chairman of the Smart Group of Industries, his forte has been to introduce the most advanced global technologies to developing parts of the world to create a level playing field between the global developed and the global developing. It is his birthday today, and some of you may have wished him, so on behalf of the Global Citizen Forum, we wish him a very happy birthday and wish him a very long, very happy life. We also have Mr. Amin Tufani here, who is Vice President Strategic Relations at Stanford and Harvard MBA. He is Vice President at Singularity University and has flown in specially for these discussions from USA. Singularity University is one of the world's leading universities offering impact education programs for corporate professionals using exponential technologies to add value to society. It's located in the campus of NASA, and as I mentioned yesterday, its founders are Google and NASA both. His work and research is focused on exponential economics and transformation technologies that can assist sustainable development of the world. We also have Mr. Richard Dasher, who has joined us via video conference. You see him there on the screen. He has joined via Skype. Thank you, Richard. We thank him for being awake so late. It's 2:30 a.m. in the morning. To begin today's discussions and set the tone and context, I would like to invite Dr. Moody, our founder chairman, to give his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Preeti. I think we are all aware using technology, not perfectly yet, but hopefully will be. So as I was saying that we are all aware that the United Nations was formed nearly 70 years back at the end of Second World War. In 1945, there was a need felt that there should not be another war. And as such, it was decided by the winners of the war, the Allied forces, which is US, UK, and USSR, to create a body which will help resolve the issues around the table rather than on the war fields. After the UN thought was given, there were two other nations. One is France, who was liberated from Germany, and Germany got defeated. And the other was China, which was liberated from Japan. And these two nations, plus the three Allied forces nations, the five nations, created a constitution in which they gave themselves a veto power to make sure that the objective of UN should not be lost as the time goes by. After that, many nations joined one after another. When UN was formed, it was 50 nations. Later on, the nations grew, and I'm told at present there are 193 nations who are members of the United Nations. Singapore has a very special role to play in the United Nations. Not only because Singapore has always have institutions and think tanks which not only think about the welfare of the Singapore people, but also think about how they can make or contribute towards making a better world. Lee Kuan Yew, the founder of Singapore, whom we all know, has created and developed a society which is today admired by virtually everyone. And this has been done not by accident, but by step building Singapore, making it friendly to all parts of the world, small or big nations. And today, Singapore has become a country which is most admired by all the nations of the world, including those permanent 5 members. So it is very appropriate that we are doing this program or starting this program, Dialogue in Singapore. Singapore is also this year, for the last few years, has been having a body called Federation of Small States. Federation of Small States is 105 nations whose population is below 10 million. And these 105 nations have a majority in General Assembly. That means that if there is a resolution which is passed by General Assembly, Singapore can do it with its friends or foes. That makes even Singapore responsibility higher. But as we know, that like any body like UN, there is a secretary. And the Secretary General of the UN is the one who helps with the various heads of the state set the agenda. This time, at the 70th year of UN, they talked about our next 15 years agenda. So UN comes out every 15 years with a 15 years agenda. Like many countries do 5 years, some do 4 years. The UN does a 15 years for this. And this is supposed to be implemented by 2016 September in terms of actual action plan. The purpose of this agenda is sustained development and also to make sure that there is no war take place anywhere on this earth. As you may be aware, that after UN got created, there are more than 300 million people died in various wars. The war does not only take on the life of the people, but also it has a great impact on the pollution, on the environment. When UN was created, at that time, the first atomic bomb was used, and that brought the end of the war because that weapon was so strong that nobody could fight it. So, in fact, the Second War ended not because people wanted to end the war, but they could not fight an enemy who had a special weapon, who has something which nobody else had. So technology play a role in creating war, in ending war, and as such, technology should also play a role in creating peace. And that is what today we are here to talk about. As UN is looking for new answers, as UN is looking how to change their structure, how to reinvent themselves, we thought we'll organize this seminar UN 2.0. As you know, that 2.0 by itself reflects that we are talking the next level of United Nations. What should be the next level of United Nations? How United Nations should work? It should be a worry for all of us. It should be a worry for all the national team. It should be a worry of all the nations. It should be a worry of all the politicians. It should be a worry for everybody. And as such, it is the right time to start discussing about it. One of the ways to bring change, as we and Amin will talk, is to bring some disruption in the way the UN is structured today. Keeping in mind the new technology available today. Today, we are talking of a technology where your address is email, which does not define which country you belong, which does not define which religion you are, which even doesn't define which gender you are. You have a mobile number, which again, you could be anywhere in the world, the location from where you are talking, with the roaming facilities available, nobody knows. So the place of stay or the place of nation you belong is no longer important. This is something which the new technology has brought. The UN was the time when the technology was radio. It was a radio age at the time of the United Nations. And what has changed over time is something which you are all aware. This thought process actually started in 1999 when Ted Turner had started CNN. CNN was the first TV channel which was 24/7. And when I met Ted Turner in 1998, we were discussing how many wars you were showing on the channel. And CNN became very popular because you could see the actual war happening on the TV. And Ted Turner told me at that time that why can't we talk of something different? So I told him, you run the CNN, you have the media, you are the one who should be doing it. He said, but I can't do it because this is something United Nations has to do. Because I am not empowered to do anything. So I said, but you have a power to influence United Nations. So I said, he said, how can I influence United Nations? So I said, that you have to think through. So he was the first person to give $1 billion as charity to United Nations. So when he gave $1 billion to United Nations, it was the front page news on Times, Newsweek, everywhere. At that time, nobody has given such a big donation to United Nations. And he had a problem in his own house because his wife, who was an actress, Jane Fonda, she said, how can you give away $1 million? He said, it's my wealth, I give you. He said, but it's also mine, because under American law, 50% of the wealth belongs to the wife. He said, you gave my $1 million away without even asking me. He said, it's fine. As far as I am concerned, I don't think I should have asked you. That resulted into a divorce with his wife. Then there was a talk, he went to Coffee Island and he asked Coffee, can we do something? So the Coffee Island came with an idea. He said, look, we have tried political leaders. It doesn't work. We are gathering after gathering every year. Why don't we invite spiritual leaders around the world to find an answer? So conference was arranged. It was called Millennium Summit of Spiritual and Religious Leaders. Leaders from all over the world came to the United Nations. There was a 4-day function. I was at that time in India, so I was fortunate to given the responsibility to bring the spiritual leaders from India. So I took a delegation of 108 leaders, which was supported by their supporters. So we had a delegation of 460 people from India who led the United Nations. It was a very good discussion. And ultimately, the outcome of that discussion was that if you want spiritual leaders to work together, as you want political leaders to work together, the United Nations does not allow the boundaries to be changed. So if anybody goes and crosses the boundary of another nation, the United Nations has to restore it. That's one of the objectives of the United Nations. So they said, hey, look, we are all in UN. Let's all agree that we will not cross the religious boundary. That means that if people are born or they are practicing one religion, they will not convert people from other religion to them. Whoever is converted. That's certain new rules. And a resolution was passed in the United Nations. It was signed by everybody and it was published in the New York Times as a full page resolution. But 4 days later, some of the religious leaders who were not there, they said we don't agree. It is our right to be able to practice our religion. It is also our right to convert people because we feel that if they are not following the right religion, they will not get salvation. So there was a big opposition, and that was the end of it. It was, now we are, that was 2000. That time also there was a 15 years program which we done. Now we are sitting in 2015. Again a 15 years program is being done. And again, Mr. Ban Ki-moon has given a statement. If these wars happens and the sanction doesn't work, because they were trying to use sanction to stop war. So if somebody is not behaving according to them, they put sanctions. And he gave the statistics that there are more people killed after the sanctions are practiced. So that system of sanctions doesn't work. And we are now realizing that Iran, which was on sanction, has, because of that, everybody suffered. Because they said we will not take oil from you. So the oil shortage happened. When the Iran sanctions came, the oil became short. When oil became short, the oil price hit the roof. So what happens is everybody has to pay for it. We are all driving cars. So because of that sanction in Iran, we all paid because of that. So I'm saying this to give you an example how we are affected for the decisions which are taken in ventilation, and we should not remain passive. So this idea of UN 2.0 actually came when I was visiting Syria. It is not my original idea. I have been thinking about what to do, but I did not have this phrase of UN 2.0. This comes from Mr. Amin. So I thought Mr. Amin should be the right person to explain it also. That why UN 2.0. But before he does that, I would like to tell you that there is one suggestion which is my suggestion. It is not GCF, it is not anybody, this is just came to me when we were talking just before. And I was feeling that the most important person in UN is the Secretary General. Because he is the only person representing UN. The rest people are representing nations. But he is the one who is supposed to represent United Nations. The selection of Secretary General, the process of selection of Secretary General is not very democratic. Because we don't need to vote. We don't get a chance to vote for him. None of us get a chance to vote for him. It is somebody goes country-wise. So can there be a disruptive system, we are talking disruptive now, where a new system is involved, where at least the Secretary General is appointed by global voting. And let the candidates of Secretary General go around the world and propagate what they feel can be done in United Nations. And as such, that will help us. If we have a right Secretary General, that is a good starting point. This idea also doesn't come from me. This idea came last time when we had a session. And we had Kishore Bhagwan. So Kishore Bhagwan was here. He is from Singapore. He runs a body called Lee Kuan Yew University. Lee Kuan Yew had created this university to educate in the right way, the bureaucrats, and teach how the world should go in a better way. And Kishore is a very renowned writer. And when he came here, he said, before the next Secretary General is appointed, we should take steps to make sure he's not the wrong one. He did not say how he will select the right word, but he said this is one thing which GCF should work with. So today I got reminded by that and I thought I will suggest it. But GCF is a movement. As such, whatever we are saying is all going to be on the GCF website. Anybody can participate, anybody can comment, anybody can write, and that by itself become a way to express your opinion. And it will be channeled in a proper way so that those opinions are not lost. So I think today gathering is extremely important. It is going to affect all of us, whatever nationality we belong to, whatever religion we follow, whatever gender we belong to. Because this is United Nations is today, we can say, the parliament of the world. If there is anywhere where the world leaders meet and think, it's United Nations. Recently in Paris, they had a big dispute, ended up in a compromise agreement regarding the weather, the pollution, which all of us get affected. All of us suffer because of some misdoing of someone. And as such, whatever decisions are taken, we should be able to be participating because it affects all of us. So this is the purpose of this. There will be talks further, but everybody will be invited who will want to say something. And we'll start by our friend who is joining from US. Thank you for with us. So I will hand over to him to say his views. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Modi, for the inspiring and thought-provoking address as also. So you have to mention page 1, page 2, and accordingly there will be...
Certainly. So let's go to page 2. I would like to begin with really my own view that complements Dr. Modi's presentation in his opening comments about the importance of some sort of a United Nations 2.0. And I think that as part of the portfolio, the mission of UN 2.0, innovation will be a key to solving the problems of the emergence of an Asian community for innovation. But I think maybe a step along the way. Let's go to page 3. So one of the challenges with these new technologies is that greater connectivity does not equal greater understanding. As Dr. Modi mentioned, we have reached a new stage in the history of mass communication. From the very beginning, it was one-to-one communication where it took a long time to get the message out. Word of mouth, letters. Then in stage 2, and this was the time when the current United Nations was created, was the broadcasting age. The transmission of information was typically asynchronous, but it was a much shorter time lag. And now we have a many-to-many communication era in which real time people are communicating what's going on and in a rapidly developing situation. But our first problem that this kind of new technology creates is that because there are so many information sources, people tend to select the sources that reflect their own pre-existing points of view and their own perspectives. There's also little attention to vetting for accuracy. If we could go to page 4, please. After the Boston Marathon bombing a couple of years ago, the Pew Research Center did a survey to see where people got their information about the bombing. So certainly television is still major, radio, newspapers. The traditional internet is the largest, most dominant source of information. But you see that younger people especially are using online mobile devices and social network sites as their sources of information. These are real-time. They reflect the points of view of many people, not just a few editors. But, as you see on page 5, what people are really posting are their generic comments and their opinions. The amount of true information out of all of the almost 8 million tweets after the Boston Marathon bombing really only accounted for 20% of all of the total Twitter traffic. In fact, rumors and fake content exceeded that amount and accounted for 30%, almost 30% of what people posted. So this is a major challenge with this new technology. We can go to page 6. The second challenge is that because these technologies enable real-time communication, they lead people to expect real-time information. People want to know immediately what's going on, and even a day time lag seems too long. This means that there's less time spent in analysis and thoughtful critical thinking about the deeper meaning of events. And the third problem is that there is still a digital divide. The difference between the people who are networked to good quality international news sources and other people who may be networked to news sources is cultural as well as socioeconomic. So as a result of this, along with the spread of the internet, ubiquitous mobile computing and communication, for the last 20 years, it appears we're seeing an increase in global terrorism and an increase in racist comments made in public. This kind of thing is a very serious problem for humanity. On page 7, I would say that this is precisely why we do need some sort of United Nations 2.0. If you go back not only to the current United Nations, but the League of Nations that was created after World War I, both of those two initiatives developed as responses to prevent the recurrence of a military conflict, a world war. The threat to humanity has expanded from oppression and aggression to sustainability of humankind in the face of problems such as global warming, terrorism, shortages of water and food, and we could name probably 4 or 5 others relatively easily. I think that in this new kind of threat, in the face of this new kind of threat, promoting innovation and developing solutions to these problems that will meet the needs of the maximum number of people possible will be one of the major purposes of a new type of international organization. If we can go to page 8, I think that this new organization's focus on innovation can use a model such as the following to understand how innovation occurs. An innovation is a new combination of people, capital, and some idea, which means that you need sources of all of those elements, and you need dynamics that will cause the flow into a new combination. On page 9, in fact, this type of process tends to happen on a local scale. You have urban centers such as Silicon Valley, and now there are probably 15 or 20 other Silicon Valley-like centers in the world that show that innovation happens best when diverse resources can be in proximity to each other. We can use new technologies for this, but there will be an essential need to make sure that we have the human-to-human interaction that will enable innovation. In fact, some people are concerned that the internet is two-dimensional interaction right now instead of face-to-face contact, and that as such, our ability to really understand each other may even be diminishing. On page 10, I'd like to point out that there are three stages of economic development that are often recognized as economies develop from what may be called factor-driven or developing economies through an efficiency-driven stage and into a stage that's truly driven by innovation. On page 11, the point is that innovation occurs at every stage of economic growth, but that the opportunities, the motives of innovation shift along with the nature of the economic development. So in a traditional developing economy, the real opportunity is to create an industry, usually where no industry exists beforehand. Whereas in an efficiency-driven economy, you see a great deal of globalization. Successful companies are expanding to world markets to continue their growth. And then in an innovation-driven economy, really fresh new ideas and new ways of looking at old problems are the essence of business opportunities. So along with this, there's an increasing likelihood that a particular innovation would cause some disruption to existing business. This changes the dynamics. On page 12, this is a complicated slide I hope you'll take a look at more later. The point is that you find all stages of economic development in Asia right now, and you see different types of innovation that are happening. They reflect different dynamics, different opportunities, different societal contexts in the different economies of Asia. We can benefit greatly by coming together and taking advantage of these different points of view, provided we can really get these kind of different points of view. So moving on, there are some early indications that an Asia community of innovation greater than any single nation is developing. Moving to page 14, among these early innovations, this is an overview slide, I see more international joint research and development activities. I'm seeing more cross-border venture capital, and also I'm seeing more foreign direct investment inside Asia. I have a few slides on these. Slide 15 points out that joint academic research papers with co-authors in China and India have skyrocketed among the more advanced economies. It's remarkable that in the United States, for example, U.S. authors are writing almost 3 times as many papers jointly with Chinese authors now as they did 20 years ago. So this is an indication of greater international collaboration. On page 16, we see that intra-Asia foreign direct investment is also increasing noticeably, especially within ASEAN. You're seeing a great deal of flow of funds to develop not only portfolio type investments for financial return, but management cooperation on an international scale. A second indication of FDI, foreign direct investment, is on page 17, which shows that China's outbound foreign direct investment is flowing in massive amounts to the rest of Asia. And this is an interesting kind of development of an Asian community. On page 18, we see that Japanese outbound foreign direct investment flowing into Asia is also drastically increasing. So this is a further indication that people are trying to create a community to do real things to solve real problems. On page 19, with regard to innovation, you also see indicators of more international activity in the development development of incubators and accelerators that aim to help promising startup companies reach beyond the borders in which they were created. So there are a number of incubators that I've mentioned that are trying to move Asian startup ideas into US markets early. I'm very interested in Idea Space down in the Philippines, which is an incubator that is dedicated to startups that are solving emerging market environment resource problems. However, we're not really seeing a network topology among these activities yet. It's still relatively traditional human-to-human networking, and I think that we do need to see more in the organization on an international scale. So a summary of my comments is on page 20. I think that the idea of United Nations 2.0 is very important. I think that one of the major tasks for UN 2.0 is to channel innovation to better solutions to global problems. And I hope that the signs that of greater international interaction in Asia are a step along the way. But I would also say that in closing, one of the most important how-to problems is how we can use existing political structures in order to support and protect the grassroots kinds of activities such as Bitcoin and other kinds of problem solving that we need to do on an international scale. So those are my comments. If we have time, I would be happy to take a question or two.
Thanks, Richard. That was a really fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
We have actually Mr. Amin Tufani as the next speaker. Would you like to listen to him?
Yes, I would.
Okay, lovely.
All right, is this on? Can everybody hear me? Perfect. Richard, can you hear me? All right, next time you're in Palo Alto, let's grab a drink. Let's go for coffee. No? Yes? There we go. All right, well, it's a pleasure to be back, everybody. Welcome back to folks who were here yesterday. Great to see you again. And to new folks, again, it's a privilege to begin this conversation. Dr. Modi motivated the need for UN 2.0. He eloquently framed the problems we have with the United Nations currently. And Richard's belief is innovation is going to play a critical role as we think about potential solutions. I would like to build on top of the framing that these two gentlemen have eloquently done. So let me begin by talking a little bit about Singularity University and also our approach to innovation and how we might reimagine the future of the UN. But let me also share with you my own framing for a potential solution. I want us to be open to not only incremental improvements to the United Nations, not only an evolutionary approach, but also a disruptive approach. It might be that it'll be faster and easier to bypass evolution and come up with a disruptive strategy. So as long as we're all open to that, I think we have the perfect common ground to start the discourse. So let's begin. Yes. Okay, so this is Singularity University. In the picture you see some images from our campus. You can see on your right we have the labs, which is where organizations from around the world send teams to actually innovate and come up with new solutions and strategies. And we also, the top right corner is the classroom that we have on the NASA campus. And we also have a lot of conferences around the world and a few other events. The main idea that we are working on at Singularity University is the question of how to positively impact 1 billion people in 10 years' time, leveraging what we call exponentially growing technologies. Here's the list. We have computation networks, we have artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, digital medicine, and nanotechnology. And ultimately, our goal is to leverage these technologies to solve problems in these areas, what we call global grand challenges. Health, security, water, poverty we talked about yesterday, and many others. And ultimately, every program that we run, every initiative coming out of the university is focused on leveraging these technologies to solve the world's biggest problems. That's why when Dr. Modi paid us a visit in California, the message of GCF, Global Citizens Forum, really resonated with me. Ultimately, we're all working towards building a better world. Our approach is quite technological, and as such, I think quite conducive to reimagining the future of the UN. I want to mention my own background. Some of you already know. I have a technical background in artificial intelligence. I studied economic policy and poverty out of Harvard, and I also have a business degree from Stanford. The reason I share that again is very few organizations that I've seen in my life sit at the intersection of all three: technology, business, and impact. And I believe that intersection is where the biggest opportunities are. Most organizations tend to pick one or two of the corners. And I've noticed that at GCF, Dr. Modi has injected sophistication around all three. That's certainly our view at Singularity University as well. Because the golden opportunity is when you can have impact, leveraging technology, while being cognizant of business dynamics. We also had this conversation yesterday where we said poverty cannot be tackled if solutions are not sustainable. So let's take a step back and think about the philosophical underpinnings that are effectively leading to exponential change. The problem is our brains evolved in a world that was local and linear. Nothing that affected you was more than a day's walk away. Our brains evolved in this type of an environment for thousands of years, but suddenly we find ourselves in this type of an environment. A world that is global and changing exponentially and all interconnected. And this is really in the last 50 years that we have seen the transition. The contention is our brains are not prepared. We have not had that brain upgrade. The evolution that we've had for thousands of years suddenly is being challenged because the world is changing exponentially fast. So effectively, we need a new way of reimagining our future to deal with the changes that are coming. At the core of this philosophy is a distinction between exponential change and linear change. Again, we're very used to linear change. Our brains are extremely good at linear projections and linear extrapolation. But really, the key point is the knee of the exponential curve. If you look at the knee, just before the knee, we call that the deceptive phase. When technology is growing, a lot of people believe, all right, it's growing at a linear pace, but suddenly it hits the knee of the curve and it takes off. And that's where disruptive opportunities or disruptive stress is. If you are an established organization, you're going to experience disruptive stress. If you are a startup, if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to have disruptive opportunities. And this applies not only to businesses, but also to governments, but also to NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and nonprofits. Quite frankly, everybody is affected. This applies to human beings as well. Individuals are affected. And that's quite frankly why we have government leaders, business leaders, all sorts of people visiting us, trying to figure out this type of future and how disruption versus incremental change might take place. I encourage us to pause and think about whether the UN is on a linear trajectory or an exponential trajectory. And my belief is it is the latter. And I've seen a lot of organizations have massive difficulty going from a linear mindset to an exponential mindset. So again, it is important as we think about the future of the United Nations to be open to disruptive modification versus evolutionary modification. Let me give you a few examples of this whole disruptive linear versus exponential trends. This is the first transistor in 1958. When the transistors were invented, in an area of half of an inch, a few centimeters, you could put 2 transistors. That's how many we could fit. Horizontally, that's 1 transistor. Vertically, that's the second one. By 1971, the interprocessor had 2,300 in an area that is quite tiny. And the average GPU in 2012 had 7.1 billion. Do you really believe that the inventors of the transistor anticipated this kind of move, this kind of exponential growth? So if even the innovators, the inventors did not see this, what about the rest of us? This represents, by the way, 100 billion-fold improvement over the course of 40 years. 100 billion-fold. And that's quite phenomenal. Here's another example. This device, this is the inertial measurement unit. Let me turn it a bit. This is the inertial measurement unit that NASA developed in the 1960s. Millions of dollars spent on research and development, and it measures velocity, acceleration, and orientation. Of course, today we all carry this in our pockets, in our cell phones, for less than $1 and $3. And ultimately, one of the questions that we think about is, where is this headed next? And the belief is this is going to go to the molecular level, and this is going to have the sensor technology that is going to be free and prevalent and everywhere. And what does the world look like when we have sensor technologies at that level? Think about the latency of the reaction time at the United Nations and our governments, how long it takes for bad policy to be modified because we have very inefficient sensors. Suddenly, Google and Facebook know immediately when one of their policies or design choices are not working out. So they respond in real time. That's the whole topic of real-time policy making. But governments lag behind, and the United Nations certainly is quite slow in that regard. This is the world's first GPS, commercial GPS receiver. 53 pounds is this device, around 20 kilograms. And the cost for this unit was $120,000. And again, hundreds of millions of dollars in research and development. Today, of course, that's how big it is. And it is less than $5. This gentleman is one of my heroes. Stephen Sasson invented the digital camera at Kodak. And he came up with that device that you can see, 0.01 megapixels, 4 pounds, around 2 kilograms, $10,000 for the unit, for the actual device, and hundreds of millions of dollars for research and development. What do you think the board of directors said when he showed up with this device? He said, get out of here. We're not in this business. We're in the paper and ink business. That's what they said. Where in reality, they were in the memory capture business. And we'll see how they were disrupted. But ultimately, from the moment you press the button on this camera that Stephen invented, it took 20 seconds for the picture to be taken. Imagine that today. If you press the button, then it takes 20 seconds. So quite remarkable how far we've come. And that's how much better we've gotten. 1,000,000 times better, 1,000 times the resolution, 1,000 times cheaper, and 1,000 times lighter. This is absolutely phenomenal, and ultimately, at the core of all the exponential change in technologies is the exponential growth in data. So I'd like to go through an exercise where we think about how long it takes humanity to generate 5 billion new gigabytes of data. Completely new gigabytes of data. I'll give you a hint. In 2010, it took us 2 days. Any ideas for 2013? An hour? An hour is a very exponential guess. We'll go with that, that's good. It actually took us 10 minutes. And this year, it is believed to have dropped to less than a minute. Eric Schmidt, ex-CEO of Google and the current chairman of Google, was my professor at Stanford, and he had this quote that he shared with my class. He said, every, more than 100 hours of video content is added to YouTube every minute. Every minute. So there's a massive explosion in data. And also, we got this from General Electric, GE, that is one of our partners at Singularity University. A commercial airliner generates more than 1 terabyte of data per day. I mentioned I have a background in AI, and a lot of you come from a technical background as well. You probably have heard of big data. And big data is really about data storage. Our innovations in processing of data lag behind. And really what gives us hope is that today, for the first time, you don't need to go to the machine, to the computer, to say, here's my question, give me the answer. But with the emergence of hypothesis-free AI, technologies like deep learning that you might have heard of, you can go to the computer and say, find interesting questions and then answer them for me. It's a massive departure from how we've been doing AI classically. And as a result, what you can do, what Google did, they trained an AI to recognize images of a human face. And in the process of that training, the machine taught itself to recognize the images of a cat. Nobody asked the machine to recognize cats, but it did on its own. So suddenly, we're entering this hypothesis-free AI. And think about what we could do with that type of data and pattern discovery. How many, to what extent can we upgrade the caliber of the conversations at the United Nations if we know exactly what is happening? So sensor technology and data volume are really hopeful components in the future of the UN and how we reimagine our world. This leads to threats and opportunities. Again, if you're an established organization, language of threats tends to be what gets people going. And if you are a startup, you can adopt a language of opportunities. But quite frankly, you need to be very cognizant of who's on the other side. Otherwise, the wrong choice of language will get you nowhere. Too often I see people talk about language of opportunities in an environment that is very risk averse. And you're too busy avoiding those risks. So language of threats would be more conducive. But here's an example. Vinod Khosla is a famous venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, and he looked at the aggregate predictions of industry experts about the growth of mobile technologies. In 2002, the industry experts in aggregate projected 16% growth rate for mobile technologies. And you can see what they had seen up until that point, right? Of course, they were wrong. It went higher, much higher. They were right at the knee of the curve, so fine. They just projected linearly into the future. By 2004, they had realized that they were wrong, but then they projected 14%. They said, yeah, we were wrong, but the growth is over, it's going to slow down a little bit. It kind of looks exponential, but no, forget that, it's going to slow down. So in aggregate, all industry experts put together, they said, mobile technology is going to grow at 14%. Final answer. Of course, they were wrong, and by 2006, the aggregate projection was downward adjusted yet again. So to what extent can we be wrong again repeatedly? This highlights the fact that, again, human brain is designed to think linearly. It is extremely counterintuitive for us to think in exponential terms, which really brings up the point that even our current ideas around what UN 2.0 might look like are very likely to be linear. And it's a challenge to be designing for a future that we cannot imagine quite yet. It requires an extreme degree of adaptability, which incidentally why I've been working on the concept of adaptability quotient, AQ, instead of IQ. Because IQ is overrated. Beyond the first 2 years on the job, IQ does not predict success. but AQ does. If the world is changing exponentially, if the world is changing so fast, your strongest predictor of success is how well you adapt to those changes. Let's continue the story. It didn't end there. So right now, they have been wrong multiple times. In 2008, this is after the iPhone is launched, so a massive data point. Again, they're saying, no, exponential growth is over. We've been wrong many, many times. It's going to continue to grow at 10%, which was, of course, incorrect yet again. Again, highlights the fact that even us, we could have made those errors because the human brain is really evolved to think linearly, not exponentially. In 10 years, it is predicted that more than 40% of Fortune 500, these are the largest 500 companies in the US, will no longer exist. We're not talking about companies leaving the Fortune 500 index. We're talking about companies not existing. And let me tell you, this research was done through a linear projection into the future. So what if even this is going to be exponential? And we have looked at this. This is quite troubling. This is why a lot of folks come to us to try to adopt this framework of exponential thinking. And this is quite frankly why NASA and Google and all these other entities helped found Singularity University. And in my opinion, this is our best hope for designing organizations in the future that can be resilient and adaptive. Let's go back to Kodak as an example of massive disruption. So in 1996, Kodak is a $28 billion company with 140,000 employees. This is a massive organization, and inflation adjusted, this would be a $40 billion company today. So think about an organization with 140,000 employees today. What is the first impression you have of that?
It's closed.
What's that?
It's closed already.
It is close. We'll get to that in a second. But if you were to look at a 140,000 person company or organization, maybe the UN, can you imagine that organization going to nothing? It's very hard because an institution of that size projects permanence, projects, the fact that it's not going anywhere. This is a massive, this is basically similar to imagining Google going bankrupt. How hard is that for us right now? That's what Kodak was like back then. And of course, as the gentleman exploited my punchline, by 2012, Kodak went bankrupt with 17,000 employees. I was classmates at Stanford with the girlfriend of the founder of this company, Instagram. How many people have seen or used Instagram? Yeah. So Instagram, with 12 employees, achieved a market capitalization of $1 billion. This is important, not because of the financial figure, but because of one simple fact. Because of exponential growth in technologies, we are all empowered to do more. 12 people achieved $1 billion valuation. It's not about the money, it's about technological empowerment. The fact that we should all feel empowered to reimagine our current world. And in my opinion, the biggest risk is thinking too small. Because our reach exceeds our imagination. So let's upgrade our imagination. And that's really the point of my conversation with you right now. We call this the new Kodak moment, by the way. A great example of this type of disruption that might be coming to the United Nations or any other organization is what has happened to the hotel industry. Hyatt is a very well-respected chain, more than $4 billion in revenue, $8.4 billion market cap, founded in '57. This year, this company is set to become the world's largest hotel chain, Airbnb. And they have $14 billion valuation. I believe that number is actually outdated. I believe they're closer to $30 billion right now. And they only have $250 million in revenue, tiny compared to Hyatt, but set to become the world's largest hotel chain. How many properties do they own? Zero. So this highlights an important departure from classical business models. And this is really why I teach a course at Singularity called Exonomics, Exponential Economics. Because exponential growth in technology affects business dynamics very, very profoundly. What you're seeing here is the emergence of platform businesses. So if you were to think about market power, there are different types of businesses you could be in. You could be in a content business. And that's, as a content business, you command the lowest amount of power in the marketplace. The next level up is a service or product. Most of us are in businesses that offer services or products, and you are delivering direct value to whoever is on the other side of the transaction. We're beginning to see a new type of business model, which is the platform model. The platform model is where you connect two sources, a source of value and a sink of value. You connect two entities and you let them figure it out. The United Nations was designing the image of a platform, but in my opinion, it has been downgraded to a product/service. It has failed to be a platform because a good platform creates unpredictable results that are useful for everybody. And we haven't seen that in a long time, in my opinion, from the United Nations. Ultimately, beyond the platform, you have an ecosystem. And an ecosystem is really what GCF is designing the image of. And if we think in terms of what Richard shared with us, the Asian metrics that you shared with us, Richard, are very conducive to the development of that ecosystem. And ultimately, ecosystems do have the power to change the world. This is Singularity University, and you can see my office actually brings back memories. So we were based on the NASA campus, and NASA, Google, and a few other organizations are founding partners. And we have three main educational programs. I'll just briefly mention them because there were quite a few questions after yesterday's session. But every single program basically is designed in the image of leveraging technology to solve humanity's global grand challenges. This is our curriculum. The curriculum is designed designed around the conversation on technologies. And let me tell you, it's not just individual technologies. You can read about individual technologies anywhere on the web. The magic lies when you combine biotechnology with nanotechnology with artificial intelligence. So at the intersection of multiple technologies, and that's really the conversations we have in our education, in our executive program, where I've seen an executive from Hershey's, the chocolate company, somebody from the United Nations, and a gentleman from Coca-Cola engage in a conversation that would normally not happen. But that conversation has the power to change the world, because everybody is thinking outside the box. Hershey's, by the way, no longer thinks of themselves as a chocolate company. They think of themselves as a data company. Think about that. A chocolate company now thinking like a data company. And Coca-Cola has gone, and Coca-Cola and Hershey's are both members of our lab. They send teams to the lab to innovate. Coca-Cola now thinks of themselves as a distribution company, not a sugary water company. So you can see how business interest is starting to be better aligned with impact. The second part of our curriculum, which I believe is much more relevant to the conversation for Year 2.0, is crowd and community tools. For instance, you could really empower a lot of people to shape decisions and to disintermediate classical decision processes by interacting with each other directly. How many people are familiar with Kickstarter? Kickstarter.com? So this is a platform that has disrupted multiple industries in the US. You go on this platform and you say, I have an idea for a new type of bottle. This is my invention. I haven't produced it yet, but here's my idea. And then people around the world pre-purchase the bottle that you are going to create in the future. And then not only that, as they give you money, they also help you develop this. They have great ideas, they give you feedback. So in one step, this platform has disrupted three groups. Investors are disrupted, venture capital firms. Market research is disrupted because your consumers are pre-purchasing your product before the product has hit the market. So you have de-risked the proposition. You know there's a market for it. And you also have disrupted product development because your customers are also the ones giving you feedback on the bottle. It is that type of interactivity that is empowered by crowds that is creating a new type of world. And that's exactly what Dr. Moy was alluding to. The fact that we can disintermediate United Nations or any other organization where classically representation has been critical, right? We used to live in a world where not all of us could participate in decisions. That's why we needed to elect representatives and send them to make decisions on our behalf. Very quickly, we're beginning to see new dynamics where disintermediation means we can all participate. Case in point is Wikipedia. Any one of us can go on Wikipedia and correct an error or create a new page, contribute content. I want to take a step back and really reinforce this message on exponential versus linear thinking. If there's one thing to take away from my conversation today, I hope it'll be this one. What does exponential feel like? If you were to take 30 linear steps starting from here, this room, how far will you go? You'll probably get to the main entrance, right? 30 meters away. What if you took 30 exponential steps? 1 meter, 2 meters, 4 meters, 8 meters, etc. How far will you go? Any guesses? Back to the US. That's a pretty exponential guess again. You would actually go around the planet 26 times. 26 times around Earth. This highlights the fact that it is very counterintuitive to think in exponential terms. But that's exactly how technology is changing. Are we prepared for these changes? Have you lost Richard? Does that mean I can put this down now? Can I destroy this for a second? Who's out? All right. So, can you hear me? All right. 26 times around the planet. This gentleman discovered Moore's Law. This is Gordon Moore. He didn't invent Moore's Law, but he discovered it. And effectively, Moore's Law is the fact that the price performance of computers is doubling every 18 to 20 months, right? And it has been 18 to 24 months. It has been quite accurate. This is a log linear graph. It is, we're taking the log, otherwise it would just go whoosh, it would just go vertical. So this is a log linear graph, and you can see how beautifully we're tracking Moore's Law. Dashed line is Moore's Law, the prediction that he made around doubling of computer power. And the dots are data points we have from actual computer technology. So the question is, where is this headed next? Of course, as we hit silicon limits, we need to be thinking about the next step. And quantum computing is a very good candidate. In fact, we have the world's first quantum computing software company at our labs as one of the companies at Singularity University. The exponential growth of computing power is quite counterintuitive. It is believed that by 2010, the average laptop computer surpassed the mouse processing, the processing power of the mouse brain, pardon me. So the average $1,000 laptop became faster than the mouse brain in 2010. By 2023, it is believed that the average laptop will surpass the processing power of the human brain. And by 2050, the average laptop, if we have laptops by that point, will surpass the processing power of all of humanity's brains combined. And this is not just everybody who's alive today, everybody who's ever lived combined. So this is why a lot of Hollywood companies and studios come to us, because they're trying to make those movies about science fiction and the future of the world. But let me emphasize this. Beyond the next 3 to 5 years, nobody has a good idea what the world is going to look like. So when we see these projections around 15 years into the future, it is almost comical, because the next 3 to 5 years is the sweet spot in our prediction errors. That's how well into the future we can see. Beyond that, it's pretty unpredictable. And also, 3 to 5 years maps well onto electoral cycles, corporate planning cycles, and a lot of other things. So that's what we really focus on, even though these types of predictions are quite entertaining for Hollywood and such. So faster, cheaper computing power leading to exponential growth in these technologies. This is the world we're living in right now. And this leads to 6 Ds. You can't see that on the screen, but this is our exponential framework. And this, in my opinion, is the key in reimagining the future of the UN. The first D is digitization. This means information technology has allowed us to capture things we never captured before. Sensor technology has meant everything has become digitized. But from there, we are entering the deceptive phase of exponential growth. This is the part of that exponential growth curve that is just before the knee, where it looks kind of linear, and everybody believes, okay, it's just going to continue growing at a linear pace. But then the disruptive phase sets in, and everybody is anxious and disrupted. Then we have dematerialization, disintermediation, and democratization. And therein lies the future of these types of organizations, such as the UN. Let me give you examples of dematerialization. All of these devices that the gentleman is holding from 20 years ago fit in your pocket now. That's your cell phone. This means that the physical form is becoming progressively very irrelevant. And they're all free, by the way. Demonetization and disintermediation. We have seen what has happened to record stores, Skype for long distance, how Amazon has disrupted bookstores and other types of stores, Google, eBay, and of course Craigslist with classifieds. And there are many other local examples in this market that I'm sure you can think about. The common thread here is that the margins are going to zero, but more importantly, the middlemen are being disrupted. We no longer need those middlemen. Think about the UN. What if people could make collective decisions, as opposed to choosing representatives who then choose other representatives to send to the UN who collectively make those decisions? What if we could imagine a world where every single one of us had a vote, where every single one of us participated in escalating important matters to the world attention? 4 critical insights. Number 1 is that the only constant is change, and that the rate of change is increasing. Rate of change is increasing. Remember, this is the counterintuitive part. Second, you'll either disrupt your own organization or somebody else will do it for you. Standing still is not an option. Standing still really means death. And quite frankly, a lot of our governments, a lot of our international entities are standing still. They're not reacting to exponential change in technology. Third insight, your competition is no longer a large organization. It is going to be a guy and a gal in a garage. I'm from California, we like garages. Lots of things happen in garages, lots of good startups. But it's really an entrepreneur who has been exponentially empowered. And I really do believe all of us, after today, should feel exponentially empowered, because these technologies are available to all of us. I remember one of the techniques in AI is called random forests. And a few years back, Google had an entire lab dedicated to doing random forest research, random forest analysis. Those of you with technical backgrounds probably are familiar with it. Today, each one of you can go home, download RStudio, which is a free piece of software, and to do random forest analysis on any data that you own is 1 line of code. A single line of code is doing what an entire lab used to do at Google. That's how empowered you should feel. That's the reality of the world you're living in right now. Finally, your mindset matters a lot. We talk about a bold and abundant mindset. The world has become a better place. We have looked at trends in crime throughout human history. This is the most peaceful period in human history. We have never killed each other as little as we do now, as few times as we do now. But CNN, or as we like to call it, the constant negative news network, doesn't tell you that, right? Because they're selling fear. Fear sells. Fear is easy to market, but the world has become a better place. So, along the lines of the conversation yesterday, the most important step for all of us is to upgrade our imagination, to be aligned with an abundant mindset, but also to be aligned with a bold mindset. The biggest risk is not thinking big enough. On that note, I would like to show you a video.
is wonderful, inspirational, poetic, beautiful, involved great technical challenges, genuine heroism. They brought the world together. But think about the Polynesian island on a dugout canoe, deciding one day they were going to go that way. No one had ever been that way before. No one even knew if there was anything that way before. It was amazing, and it changed the world.
People can set their minds to magical, seemingly impossible ideas, and then through science and technology, bring them to reality. And that then sets other people on fire, that other things that look impossible might be accomplishable.
Galileo is such a hero, in thinking big, and what he represents to me is both curiosity and wonder that humanity had, that pushed him and drove himself to invent and work on the first telescopes that allowed us to see the moon, and here we are.
These aviation pioneers were figuring it out as they went. No one really knew how to build an airplane, right? No one knew how to fly an airplane. It was amazing and crazy and wonderful, and they wanted to explore.
Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said because it is there.
There's so many challenges in the world, and you can feel daunted by that, and sort of oppressed by that, or you kind of say, how might we think differently about this?
Everyone else in the world is working on the next 10%. If you can be the one that delivers that 10 times improvement, you have a chance to really change things.
If you want cars to run at 50 miles per gallon, fine, you can retool your car a little bit. But if I tell you it has to run on a gallon of gas for 500 miles, you have to start over.
You need a lot of courage in this work, and you need a lot of persistence. One of the things that's really critical is not only have the courage to keep trying every day or thinking big, even if you don't really 100% believe it's possible, like you might think, this might be possible, have the courage to try. That's how the greatest things have happened.
You don't spend your time being bothered that you can't teleport from here to Japan, because there's a part of you that thinks it's impossible. Moonshot thinking is choosing to be bothered by that.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Humanity's progress has been a series of amazing, audacious things, from the very small and personal to the great, big, and grand. And we are a species of moonshots. And to me, that's like a really amazing, poetic, inspirational thing.
I think our ambitions are a glass ceiling for what we can accomplish.
When you find your passion, you're unstoppable. You can make amazing things happen. It's been true through all of history.
I believe in the human spirit, and I believe that there are always going to be crazy people who will get out of bed one morning and say, you know what? I think I can build a space elevator, and we'll still do it. But I think that if we become afraid to take these great big risks, we stop inspiring people. We stop achieving things. And the biggest nightmare scenario is that we won't have what it takes to solve the really big challenges.
When Kennedy said that we would put a man on the moon, it's about the fact that he said, we don't know how to do this yet, and we're going to do it anyway. And that sends chills up everybody's spine. Because if that happens, what couldn't we do?
It's a very inspiring video. My dad is a psychiatrist, as you can probably tell. But we have great conversations about life together. And he has taught me one important element. He's taught me that in life, perspective is easy to find, but hard to keep. Easy to find, but hard to keep. So the challenge for all of us, after being inspired, is to keep that inspiration, keep it alive. And if there's one element that I think can keep our inspiration alive, is this statement that I skipped, this one. I have this on top of my desk. What is the one area of your work that you should focus on that could create a 10x change instead of a 10%? When we think about the future of the UN or any other institution, it is very easy to think about incremental change. It is very easy to try to improve it by 10%, 20%. Wouldn't 50% be amazing? No. We honestly have an opportunity to think beyond that, to think what the 10x change might be. How could we imagine that type of future for the UN? chances are we're not going to solve it today. But if you have felt inspired, if you emerge from this session looking for that 10x, then the job is done. Then GCF should be proud, and I'll be proud. These are some of the organizations that work with us, and they treat Singularity as an engine for innovation. I want to highlight the fact that the World Bank, the UN, UNICEF is actually a member of our lab. So let's not make the mistake of thinking that people who are in the UN are not thinking about this. They are. They're people like us. But they have inherited an institution with a set of laws and protocols. And even they are trying to upgrade themselves. So we're all in this together. There is no us versus them. It's just a group of people who should feel empowered to take it to the next level. Educate, innovate, and engage. This is what we focus on. When aspiring to create change in the world, you want to make sure you're not the only one trying it. Because success has many parents, but failure is often an orphan. Right? Find those parents. This is fantastic because we have a forum where we're collectively brainstorming on the future of an institution. These are the many parents of this idea. No one person owns it. But then you also want to make sure you innovate. The importance of innovation was mentioned before. Thinking outside the box is critical. But then that's not enough. You could educate a critical mass, you could educate your support system, you could innovate, but then you need to be able to tell a good story to the world. This is absolutely critical. Too often, we educate, we innovate, and then we fail at engaging with the rest of the world and telling a good story. Let's be cognizant of that. The mission is to educate, inspire, and empower leaders to apply exponential technologies to address humanity's grand challenges. This is Singularity's mission. I didn't put Singularity there because I believe this could very well be the mission of UN 2.0. This is probably very much aligned with the mission of the Global Citizen Forum. So I believe UN 2.0 is going to look more like this, and it'll be an emergent network of people all around the world, rather than a select group of so-called representatives sitting together in one fancy building in New York, which is, by the way, is quite nice. I do recommend visiting it. One more video from the type of energy that this conversation can create. And I think we live in a world where it's an attention economy. If we can draw attention to a cause, chances are we can see it to fruition. And we all need to be engineers of momentum and energy and inspiration. So here's an example of what we try to accomplish at Singularity.
We live in an age where everything is changing, like a complete new things happening. This is a period where the amount of change is so immensely rapid that things happen today that you wouldn't imagine even 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
You're either the disruptor or you're going to be disrupted, but you can't be in denial anymore.
These last 100 years, the massive improvements we've seen have been the influence of technology. And let me tell you, it's not slowing down. It's only accelerating. And what you can expect to see is literally continued growth in health and wealth for every human on this planet.
We now have the programming language of life available with the push of a button. And I like to say any of you can be a genetic engineer, even if you've never done it before, because all you need to do is type.
Self-driving cars are going to, or electrical road cars, are going to go to the most dramatic changes that comes to the world in the next decade from computers and exponential technology. In fact, in some ways, it's already happening. There are a few projects that offer so much for so little.
We are now at the knee of the curve. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, it's going to be a very different era when we can really reprogram biology away from disease, away from aging.
3D printing is growing exponentially. Whether it's the automobile that you drive, the gadgets that you collect and use, all of those have been designed using 3D printers. You just don't know it yet.
It's a very exciting time, and for you to be here, really at the forefront, is a tremendous thing to be a part of.
It takes us
a certain breed of courage to take those intentions and turn it into reality. The value of an idea lies not just in the idea, but in the doing it.
It's an awesome event. Not only do I get to hang out with like-minded people, but the sparks that fly and the convergence of ideas, I think, bring about this whole exponential experience to a whole new level.
Here, you get the perfect blend of the visionaries with the big ideas, with the titans of industry that can turn them into reality.
People, they check their egos at the door and have real conversations.
The Singularity University is an opportunity to bring people from every conceivable walk of life with people that at the same time share a common aspiration to make a difference in people's lives.
Bringing together people who understand the problem and people who understand possible solutions is perhaps the only way forward.
It doesn't matter what industry you are in, the types of things that exponential technologies, they're going to impact your business. The information is becoming available. And now people are able to do things that companies used to do, and companies are doing things that countries used to do.
I mentioned that one of the courses that I teach is exponential economics, or exonomics. And the cornerstone of this course is the fact that was just mentioned. The fact that people are doing what companies used to do, and companies are doing what governments used to do. This is the exponential empowerment that I'm hoping could be the salient message of our conversation today. For each one of us to feel empowered, to think about this quite seriously, because you will have a role to play. And UN 2.0 will most likely be an emergent network of people like you, all working together collaboratively, empowered by technology. And ultimately, we have seen the influence of exponential technologies on these 7 areas: people, property, production, price, power, policy, and prosperity. And this is a journey that connects people to prosperity, that connects our world together and makes the world a much better place. Through Facebook, we're much more sympathetic towards each other. You can see another person's pain and you can experience it more directly, regardless of where they're from. This is in sharp contrast to a world only a few years ago where you probably heard one narrative in a conflict and not both sides, where you heard a very specific dogmatic view and you were never exposed to alternative views. We have the luxury of a global platform through the internet, and I think UN 2.0 should be reimagined in that image. This is my favorite quote, and I'll end on this. The best way to create the future, to predict the future, is to create it yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Amin. I think that was an amazing presentation. I'm sure we can hope that exponential leap of technology will change the world for the better. And for me, this was very familiar because I keep hearing this is Dr. Modi's language. I hear it every day.
Great minds.
Right. So I'll throw open the house for any suggestions or questions. If you could introduce yourself. Jay Pathak. He's a leading lawyer of the partner Gibson Dunn of Asia Pacific.
Just a lawyer. First of all, congratulations on all of those 3 presentations, which is fantastic, and yours particularly was, frankly, mind-blowingly amazing. But actually, I am a lawyer, and I tell you, and I'm going to speak linearly. And let me tell you, I think the UN is even less than the UN.
Not read the newspaper, and they did not see one of the electricity light in the village. And the people, they are facing a problem last 26 or 60 years, and they are not able to get the electricity. How it should be the beneficial for those people? They are not able to see all the technical things. So the technology, how it could be the beneficial for those people. And the second part, the technology is also beneficial. I am happy with that. But where the ISI people, they are hiring the agent from across the world. So the technology is facing the impact like that. Those people in India, the villagers, They are not getting education, they are not getting any help from the technology, but those people, they are sitting in another country and they are hiring the people across the world via the technology. So this is two-way factors. So how we can control and manage, and how it could be the beneficial for the useful people. This is my biggest question going inside my mind. So I thought this should be issue for that.
Good afternoon, one and all. First of all, thanks to Mr. Abdesh, who is the president, who has actually invited me here. My name is Anuj, and before I start saying anything, just I want to say an adage which I have heard since my childhood. There's a Chinese adage which says, like, if you feed a man with a fish, you feed him for a day, and if you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. I'm not here to give you suggestions, I'm not here to give you questions, I'm here to give you solutions. I have a proper model which can actually help you to bring this here. People are skeptical here about your motive, about your dreams. I believe it is possible. I actually wrote to Mr. Narendra Modi, but he didn't reply me. I actually wrote to Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, but he didn't reply me. Right now, I expect that at least United Nations will reply me and at least listen to what I have to offer you. Apart from that, the gentleman who actually told about advertising, I believe I'm doing my master's from SP Jan, and I'm doing my master's from marketing and communication. Still 4 months to go till I complete my university here. After that, I would be anyhow going to start my own company, Innovativity. As you talk about artificial intelligence, my brother, he has graduated from SUNY and he's right now working from New York with FactSet. Apart from another brother who is here in ASR, so I just want to say that I have a practical plan which can actually help you to go forward with this dream. And your dreams and my dreams, I somewhere find it aligned. And at least give me a chance to explain it. I had 2 cards, one I gave to you and one I gave to Mr. Modi. I believe you would interact with me and give me a chance to show what I have. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. Roy here. I'm doing my PhD from NTU. As a profession, I'm a pilot. I'm very much aligned with your vision of like omniscience, which are in the morning, the real-time information system, which the technology is bringing up, and the things.
But it's actually states. So states vote, states have to make changes in the UN system. You have to bring states, you have to bring leaders of states, and this message of maybe GCF, Singular, and institutions like that have to make states and governments and leaders in government believe in this, okay? And believe the difference, and not believe, but know the difference between linear and exponential. I don't think states are there today. They're not. You need to change the basic structure of the UN. You need, I think, 3/4 majority in the General Assembly. Not even the small states can achieve that. I think even 5 that Dr. Modi mentioned. So to bring that and to make that happen, yes, I think it's great to think outside the box. And by the way, I am literally fascinated by this, okay? But to make it actually happen in terms of reality and what you're knocking your head against in the United Nations. I'll tell you an example. I came, as you know, from Los Angeles yesterday. And I was trying to read up stuff because for yesterday and for today. And I was reading up something about the United Nations, and one of the 2 stewardesses who were on the aisle came to, oh my God, you're working and it's late at night, you should be sleeping. I said, no, I'm reading about the United Nations. They're young. It could be more than, between 30 to 35, but certainly less than 35. Didn't have the foggiest thing, a sense about the United Nations. But that's, and I was just thinking about it, that's symptomatic of the problem, because really nobody really cares about the UN so much as it used to be when we were growing up in the maybe 70s and 80s, where it was the thing, the Peace Corps was around in the United Nations, this whole sense of international thinking, okay? So to change it, it's a tall order. I'm not saying it's not going to happen eventually, but you really need to bring it to the level of the governments, because the states, just remember, I mean, maybe I'm speaking as a lawyer, that's the subject, only the states can make it happen. And of course the UN's got a whole bunch of other issues, okay, which I wouldn't even go into. I don't think that expanding the Security Council, giving people more vetoes. None of that is going to make a difference to the United Nations. We need to beat all of that, scrub it to one side, start with a new charter, which is more reflective, perhaps, of what you're trying to say. So I'm not even going to go to the other problems of the United Nations right now, because that's against this background, it's almost virtually irrelevant. Anyway, that's really all I have.
Thanks, Jay. Ambassador Keshav Pani wanted to speak. He's the director of the Institute of South Asian Studies, Singapore, and prior to this, he was Singapore's High Commissioner to Malaysia.
Thank you very much. Fascinating presentation. Blows the mind. My starting point is that the international system addresses the problems of the past. It never is unable to put attention to problems of the future. I'll tell you my own experience. I went to Geneva as the Singapore Permanent Representative, the WTO. Then I became chairman of the Uruguay Round Negotiating Committee. The negotiations took 10 years. And by the time we concluded the issues that we now take, we were talking about exchanges of goods across borders, but it has become a borderless world. DHL can bring my goods from Bali here in 4 hours. And the WTO has no answer. Internet banking. We are even now we're talking of financial agreements to control finances. So my basic point is we do not have an organization which is looking into the future issues. We are looking at past issues. Now, how do we get over this? Yes, the way that you have suggested is one. But I'm also a diplomat. I've been a diplomat for 40 odd years. A diplomat works on the art of what is possible. And what is possible is what is, as a friend said, the nation-state system. Now, the moment the WTO failed, did not proceed, what happened? We were looking at a globalized system, but before you knew it, we broke up into free trade agreements. The world is now broken up into 53 free trade agreements. Now, your answer is, let's globalize. But then we have 2/3 of the world not even having computers. Africa, India may be more advanced, but some places. So how do you reach out this message that you're putting, that this is the future and this is how we should go? So this is my question in my mind. How do we bridge? I mean, you are speaking to the converted, but out there, there's a whole colony out there who are unable to come across and catch this opportunity that you're talking.
Thank you.
Great.
That's Mr. Karan Singh Thakral. He's Singapore's non-resident ambassador to Denmark. In fact, he's executive director of the Thakral Group of Companies.
A similar concept. What is saying? 80% people will vote today for money. For $5, $10, depending on the level of the voting. That's a problem we need to capture. Today, whatever we say, our representative in whatever form we have, are people who reach a position that they don't need. Their greed is bigger. I'm not saying they're not ready, but their greed is bigger. But once you go yours, their concept is fantastic. That will come. Maybe we were too early, we were discussing maybe 10 years earlier, like you were saying, that the growth is going so phenomenal, 20 billion times more. But then it's thinking that you need to think we have to solve those problems before solving the
This was add-on comment to me. One, fantastic, fascinating in terms of to listen to you, activating the right brain, blue ocean strategy to think about what we can do. 2 examples I just want to share that your dream may succeed. One, Dr. B.K. Modi, 4 years back when he started the GCF, with very few people in his house. Today, the way which at least the larger issues he started discussing and debating, and more so, people like us are now started thinking, and that become our problem. It's not even one person problem, it becomes a common problem. Two, the technology, the way in which it changed in Chennai flood. Recently, Chennai in India, there was a flood. Just the social media contribution, the government was taken over by youngsters through social media. And what they did, which people couldn't do in US in California, in 4 days the city has come back to normalcy. That shows again, technology can change and make a difference. Two suggestions. One suggestion is, there's enough business case studies about how good to great companies have fallen, or Kodak example, or the book and Nike example. But there's not many examples to say how technology changed, or at least helped, to larger issues of the organizations or the world, which is the poverty or water scarcity or food scarcity. What did we make change? Intuitively we know that it does change and it made a big difference. But there should be some universities like you throwing some case studies, because that will bring the believability that yes, things can change and this can make a big difference. And lastly, one more suggestion to say is, like you said, it's very easy to get inspired, but how do you sustain that? There again, Dr. B.K. Modi, one suggestion to you, in GCF, if you can create a forum or whatever you call, like a Facebook discussion or whatever type of discussions, where some of the good moderators keep the energy flowing, keep coming back. You come back in between. I think you're a great motivator. Come back, put up one or few comments, and that will ensure that this idea is not killed with this discussion. By next year, next new year, we'll be remembering that we made a significant progress. Thank you.
It's Sanjeev.
Hi, Sanjeev here. Great presentation. Actually, all of them were good. So just wanted to make a couple of comments. And one is deriving from one of the last comments there, the individuals do what the companies used to do and the companies are doing what the countries used to do. If you take it one more step of exponential extrapolation there, which is the individuals doing what the countries do or the individuals doing what the United Nations do. So in the context of UN 2.0, firstly, I think in many of the contexts that we are talking about today, UN is has become irrelevant, and therefore to think of rejigging that to address the problems, probably there are alternative methods. So the point I'm trying to get to is that with the technologies that are available and the empowerment that is possible, a centralized organization in many of those contexts is probably irrelevant. That is my take on UN 2.0, and therefore something which is sort of more network and authority resides based on the context of the problem versus a permanent definition of authority and power, which is what technology enables you to do. So if we look at the UN objectives versus the UN organization and say that how can those objectives be met other than the wars part of it, which only the nations will decide whether they go to war or not, but rest of it, poverty alleviation, education for all, health and this and that. There are so many other alternative means to get to that, and where more and more we can make the current context and the organization of UN irrelevant and still get to that, which is what I am deriving from some of the examples that were mentioned. So therefore my proposition is that while trying to figure out how to rejig United Nations, perhaps the nation states need to figure it out, the rest of us could probably get busier in trying to tackle the problems that the UN was meant to solve and is not being able to solve. And in that process, make it irrelevant. I mean, whether it exists or not, probably should really matter other than to work. Thank you.
Dr. Pradeep wanted to speak.
I'm from the media and advertising industry. Part of the strategy for economic CNBC engagement. And I brought the one of the things which you have said, I was very surprised to see a list of clients. There's not a single media advertising company which are going out with poor thought. And they have created the thought of being a challenger brand, but they themselves are not using all this company. So isn't it possible for any of the major advertising companies and media companies in the US, none of them are clients this?
So very quickly, I'm not at liberty to have the full list there, but for example, Group M, which is the world's largest, they are a client. Yeah. So that list is not exhaustive.
Because that, in fact, all the launches and strategies I've done for the last 20 years, basically this is what we follow, and what you just showed is brilliant. In fact, the media is actually very deep. One of the major problems I have with boards, including the current board, for Jack and why now, they don't see that very going to mention if you don't disrupt your business and your strategy, other people will come to your problem. And Ruben, the split between the creative side of the ad agency and the media part of the model. Most in fact opened up the market where now other people can go and take money from the client. Earlier you go to J.Morgan or Ogilvy, you held the brand completely. Now brands get turned over every 1 or 2 years. In fact, Ruben is competing with small entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much and congratulations to all three speakers, Dr. Modi, Richard and Amin. Mind-blowing presentation. Now judges are usually very slow in accepting changes, but this one is really fascinating. Yeah. And I agree with all three speakers. We have to leave the quarreling and squabbling of who are the permanent members in the Security Council, who are the non-permanent members. We have to leave all that aside and look forward to this, UN 2.0. That's the way forward. Yeah. And I accept, I would agree with your exponential technologies. This is the way to overcome all these global issues such as the lack of natural resources, environmental issues, climate changes, weapons of mass destruction and so on. This is the way forward. Yeah? And I think more studies need to be put into this aspect to realize this so-called UN 2.0.
Thank you. Any other questions, suggestions? Please.
Hi. One of the things that I've seen and you talked about is the explosion of data. And one of the things that the UN completely failed to take part in or comment was when Eric Snowden and WikiLeaks exposed what the national governments, NSA, CIA, were doing around recording conversations, mobile phone conversations, holding data on individuals, on key national citizens. As data proliferates, and you may think, what does this have to do with me? But your credit card details, my credit card details, everything we do is today tracked and stored. I think one area where UN 2.0 has to take a part is in driving the policy around data protection for the global citizen. Yes, we have seen, if you leave it to the Americans or the British or the Europeans, you get NSA spying on the UN, you get NSA spying on the European Union, and that proliferates. So everybody's spying on everybody else, and everybody's sharing data. I think one area where UN 2.0 over the next 15 years will need to focus is around the security of data for the global citizen and for the world. We're talking, based on the numbers you gave, we're talking big data being available for national states and governments to exploit, which means they can kill disruption, right? And they did that. The Americans put Eric Snowden, marked him as a criminal, and now he cannot enter the US. What Eric Snowden and the WikiLeaks founder did was actually show us how much of our data we don't even own. We have no clue who's listening to what or who's recording your transactions. When you go on Amazon, when you go on all of these platforms that we interact with, capture our data. If you think at a global level, okay, as a global citizen, I don't want any one single government driving the policy around protecting my data. It needs to be something UN 2.0 needs to think about.
Thank you.
Just to interrupt, it is. About security of the data that you're talking about is a big thing in climate change and things like that. But it's a good point that you made.
Yeah, okay. Any other suggestion, question?
Yeah, I'm really appreciative of this seminar. Actually, I'm from one of the small villages in India, and I realize the status of the villages' life in India.
If you see the past, most of the religions follow a book, some sort of book which was written many, many years back. The same way, most of the countries follow a constitution which was made way, way back at the start of the religion books or beyond the constitutional books which create the nation. So if you look at any national leader, he sort of abides by the constitution. That is what we do. And the same thing flows in United Nations. The United Nations also, the whole world is afraid of speaking. I'm talking of internet, through internet. But if you make internet, which is now becoming, that who is speaking, nobody knows. So can there be a situation where people are able to interact on the religious book, on the constitution, because religious books can be interpreted in many ways. The constitutions can be interpreted in many ways. And so is the United Nations Charter. So I think, like for example, United Nations has this veto. Now the purpose of veto was to make sure that the United Nations follows the path of peace. But that's the only purpose. It was not the purpose of the development or the sustainable development that they call it. That was the purpose of P5. It is not the purpose of P5 to veto anything they like. So these are things which needs change. And it's not that impossible. As in technology, the change takes place when the old book is cleared up. Somebody writes a new book. And I think that's what GCF is about. Thinking beyond religion, beyond nationality, and even beyond gender. For centuries, the woman power, brain power has not been used. They were not the one who are making decisions or creating decisions. I think today, the biggest change in the world is happening. But neither the religious books recognize women, and many nations, even United Nations, the women were not allowed to vote before. So I think there are changes coming in the society. And the purpose of GCF will be to interact on a continuous basis, on a technological way. And we are happy that we have the Singularity University, which will help us to move to the next step. And that's why we are hoping in the coming months to have many joint programs with Singularity Universities and the similar universities. So I hope that you have all enjoyed it. As long as it has stimulated your mind and as long as it has given you hope that there are people who want to bring change, and these people are not people who can't bring change. As you said in the beginning, the people are doing what the company used to do, and the companies are doing what the government used to do. So I think that change which is coming through Facebook and through other companies is going to have impact, and we are all very hopeful that we will all contribute to make a better world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I once again thank all the dignitaries, the audience, Amit Tufani for coming all the way. And I urge all of you to become members of the Global Citizen Forum. For those who have not become members, the forms are available here. We have an interactive blog, so it would be wonderful if you can give your suggestions. We'll ensure we channelize it so that it doesn't get lost. We want you to be a part of the movement and for innovation and change, and we can together drive that change. Thank you. And we have a little surprise for Dr. Modi.
wait for it, sir.